But the reason why the folks on this side of the aisle have a hard time digesting that is because your curiosity on what violates the law only applies when it's politically convenient. To talk about Hunter Biden when it's pennies, when it's pennies compared to $2 billion from a foreign government. And I'm not saying that Jared Kushner violated the law, but what I am saying is that was probably negotiated before he left, a $2 billion deal. You announce it months after you leave, probably negotiated before. He never run a hedge fund before. We talk about Hunter Biden having no experience. He never had run a hedge fund before. He was put in charge of Middle East. The $2 billion is from the Middle East. He had no experience in the Middle East. But there's no curiosity because it's Jared and because he's Trump's son-in-law. And so coming to us and pleading with us about Hunter wouldn't sound so hypocritical if there was one of you, just one of you, that would look into the camera and speak into the microphone and say, you know what, that smells pretty bad. We should look into that as well. And I think, quite frankly, the American people would believe you more about your inquiry and about Hunter if they saw your curiosity into the Biden family with the same curiosity into the Trump family. And so that's why we are where we are. It's why the American people have no faith in this institution. And it's also why, quite frankly, you know, many members of your own party have gone in front of the camera and admitted the 118th Congress has done nothing. And so we're here. We would like to do oversight and apply the law and the rules universally. But when we talk about Trump or Jared Kushner, you all look down just to make sure Donald Trump doesn't see you on camera. You can't even look up and be interested that a foreign government, months after someone who actually worked in the White House, Hunter Biden never worked in the White House, months after someone worked in the White House and was in charge of that very region, got $2 billion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Would the gentleman yield?
Sure. Yes, I would.
With great respect, your allegations have absolutely nothing to do with what this committee is investigating. And
you're not curious about it, though?
Well, it has absolutely nothing to do with anything that we're investigating.
But don't we get to decide? There are questions. Okay, sorry.
Well, I don't want to use up the time, but I made my point. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to respond to my friend from Florida, gentlelady from California. I think this, unfortunately, does devolve into a partisan exercise. And I just listened with interest at what you say kind of, I'm not going to use galls folks on the other side of the aisle and bothers you. And I respect that. So I want to let you know what galls or what troubles us on this side of the aisle based on all the claims that you have made, because many of us, I was one of them, sat in a skiff week after week, day after day for an impeachment. One of the members of this committee, now, as a staff member then, a staff attorney then, knew there were lies being told to compel the impeachment, to back up the impeachment, to reinforce the impeachment. Lies. Abject, straight-up lies. Not to mention the fact that for years, the other side of the aisle pursued the then duly elected President of the United States based on pure hyperbole about some Russian hoax that has now turned into, it's the same old story from the 1930s in Germany and the 1940s. If you tell a lie enough times, it becomes the truth. We sat and watched you dismantle the country and the presidency and any agenda that the American people have voted for based on that. And to date, to this minute, to this moment, I don't think one of you have ever, to use your phraseology, the kind gentleman from Florida, stood in front of a camera and said, that was pretty bad. Holy smokes, I can't believe we did that. And now with the benefit of hindsight, we look back, and I look back, and I say, how could we have ever done that? How did we ever mislead the American people? How could we have lied? How can we make up for that? How can we recover the lost time? How can we recover the lost reputations? No interest whatsoever. None whatsoever. And again, this isn't about looking back at the past. This markup, this is a markup. This is not a hearing. This markup is strictly and specifically about the actions chosen by Hunter Biden. And I said again, and I'll say it, I said before and I'll say it again, I don't think this committee has any interest in prosecuting or pursuing Hunter Biden. He did this to himself. He made this choice. We all make decisions, and there are consequences to the decisions. He did that. Our duty is to say, is this a breach in the law? Is it a breach? Yes or no? Clearly, he can come to Congress. He sat in this very room today. He was on the grounds the day that he was supposed to appear. So clearly, he can come. He's chosen not to. If we're going to let everybody, look, Secretary Clinton got away with it, right? She was allowed to be deposed, not under oath, in her deposition on a Saturday, no holiday weekend. She got to do that. That galls the rest of America, who says when the FBI or the local magistrate or some law enforcement agency comes knocking on my door and says, you're going to appear, you've been served. Well, see here, I think I'll set the terms of how and where I'll appear. I'll just do that. Me, citizen X. You know who gets to do that? Apparently Hunter Biden, who thinks he's above the law, who thinks he's special, who he and with the rest of his family, and with all due respect, this administration shows contempt for the law, contempt for the American people, contempt for the Constitution, and contempt for the citizens of this country. Contempt. And that's what this markup is about. And if you want to know what galls us is, you're not interested, you're not the least curious about all of that. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield the balance.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond, since my friend from Pennsylvania directly addressed me? And I'm happy to have this conversation to compare the 2019 impeachment investigation. Why are you leaving, Mr. Perry? I'm happy to have the conversation, because what you saw in that investigation was 17 fact witnesses who came in and testified under oath, and then 12 of them appeared in a public hearing. There wasn't a single thing that any Democratic member of Congress said that was not supported by neutral Trump administration fact witnesses and what their testimony and their documents said. Contrast that with what we have here. We haven't had a single public hearing with a single fact witness. Not one. The only public hearing we had was a complete debacle where the Republicans' own witnesses said that there is nothing approximating an impeachable offense here. So we're done. We're not having anything out in the public. And you haven't even released the transcripts of all of the depositions. When we had our first impeachment hearing with the constitutional law professors, and I would note, I at least admire your fellow colleagues on the Homeland Security Committee, which I also sit. They didn't even bother to bring in any constitutional law or impeachment experts in their first impeachment hearing today. At least they learned from the debacle that was yours. But at that hearing, we moved to have your own fact witnesses come here and testify in public as part of the impeachment inquiry. And you voted it down. You voted it down. So if you want to compare 2019, that's fine, let's do it. Because every single fact that was in a 300-page report was not spoken by counsel, me, by Adam Schiff, the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, by any member of the Democratic Committee, of the Democratic Party. It was testimony from witnesses who had knowledge, who actually had expertise and experience and factual information about the topic at hand. We don't have that here. And when we have a witness who is willing to come and sit here and give you the evidence that you claim you want to have, you say no. You say no. You understand the accommodation process and how that works in Congress. That means that Congress issues a subpoena, and the receiving party works with Congress to accommodate the interest of both parties so that Congress can get what it needs and the interest of the witness can also be served. Hunter Biden's attorney has done that. He has agreed to every single thing in your subpoena. Every single thing. Under oath, any questions you want, any topic you want, any date you want. He will not raise privileges available to him under the Fifth Amendment. He will answer your questions. The one accommodation he wants is to do it in public in front of the American people, and you are too afraid to let him do that, and I'll yield the remainder of the time to Mr. Raskin.
Now, Chair's going to recognize, Mr. Raskin will have 1 minute and 3 seconds. The Chair's going to recognize Mr. Gosar. I just have to throw in, you must have been absent when the IRS whistleblowers testified with respect to the number of crimes and evidence that the IRS had on the person who we're voting to hold in contempt today. You remember that hearing?
Being
Chair recognized Mr.
by
Gosar.
the Department of Justice because
Chair recognized Mr. Gosar.
I will tell you, the gentleman from New York has got some facts wrong. You know, when we were talking to these witnesses, these constitutionals, Jonathan Turley, they said there wasn't, they rose to the occasion of impeachment. But they said there was a suspicion, and that's what the impeachment inquiry was all about, to go get that information, if there is. They all said that there was a suspicion based on these shell corporations. So they did say that. They didn't say what you just said. You mischaracterized that. So, you know, from that standpoint, we got to be very, very careful with how we're picking this, cherry picking this information. Maybe we do it, but you do it too. And you did it right there. Because they did not have.
Will the gentleman yield for a question?
I'll give you a
quick question. What I said was, and I just want to make sure we're on the same. I said that the witness testified that there was insufficient evidence to impeach Joe Biden.
It was an impeachment inquiry hearing.
No.
It was he said there was more than enough evidence to proceed with the impeachment inquiry. That's what we're doing. Let's be clear
but did he also say that there was insufficient evidence?
Not Mr. Gosar's time.
No.
He said both. He said both.
You know, and when we're comparing apples to apples on the two impeachments of Mr. Trump, you didn't even go through an impeachment inquiry. You didn't even vote on the floor on one of those. So if you're talking about apples and apples, we're not even close to that. You know, the one thing I thought was the lady justice is blindfolded. She's got the scales. You put the information in there, and she's going to give you a result. She's blindfolded. She doesn't see who that is. You know, Trey Gowdy made that comment. We're missing the point here, is that the information that we got is from factual based. There's information there that is suspicious. Why would you stack all these shell companies up? You got the IRS folks that said this were whistleblowers. They've been exonerated. I got to tell you, they are not liars. They're not liars. They do one thing, they're good at auditing. So I think what we do is we got to get back to the order of business. That is Hunter Biden violated the context of the subpoena. You know, he's not above the rule of law, so we ought to be just continuing that vote. I yield.
Right. Now, Mr. Raskin has 1 minute and 3 seconds.
Yep. First, to my friend, Mr. Gosar, we did not launch an impeachment inquiry for the second impeachment because Donald Trump tried to overthrow the Constitution on January 6th, 2 weeks before he left office, and we were the targets of that impeachable offense. So we all saw it. We were the witnesses, and we were the ones to vote on it, and we didn't quite have time for all of those niceties, but all of us knew exactly what happened. Secondly, I am sorry that Mr. Perry left the room at Josh Hawley's speed when Mr. Goldman began to speak there, because he made two really important points. One was he said that if you get a subpoena, you comply with the subpoena, you answer it. Yes, I would like to tell him, Mr. Perry, you comply with your subpoena. But no, he decided to arrogate the law to himself and to claim that the January 6th committee was invalid, it was illegal, it was unconstitutional. All claims that were rejected by federal courts. They do not have a single case authority for that at all. And yet he's going to now lecture other people about complying with subpoena. I mean, he should, I think, delegate some of his time to some other members to speak on that. It's a little uncomfortable there. And finally, I'm sorry?
The gentleman.
Yes, I will yield. Yes, go ahead.
Will allude to good process builds good policy, builds good politics. Would you agree?
Yes, I totally agree.
You don't skip, in the severity of impeachment, you never skip that process. But you did.
Donald Trump was already arguing that he couldn't be tried because it was too late at that point.
Okay.
He was already arguing
All right.
that.
Your all's 10 minutes has expired. Mr. Fallon, I think we have a minute and a half.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What this has devolved into is deny, 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 counter accuse. It's an old adage, and it's unfortunate because, again, and we've been talking about this now 5, 6, 10 times, the difference between a private deposition is hundreds of hours can be expended, and you can really drill down, and you can have accountability. You can get an in-depth interview. And then at that point, after we've all read that, we can come here and each of us can get our 5 minutes. This is a very big difference, and it's a distinction that needs to be, again, reiterated and refuting some of the Democratic arguments. And then I read this actual amendment, and I see this footnote number 17, this amendment where the author says, Chairman Comer has also dishonestly and repeatedly suggested that the then Vice President Biden had the prosecutor of Ukraine fired as a part of a bribery scheme. Where's the proof? And then you read the footnotes, and there are opinion pieces. The fact is that according to the FBI, the informant, the human source, was very reliable. They paid him over $100,000, and they've been working with him for almost 10 years. Did Victor Shokin, the prosecutor, get fired? Yes. Who was advocating for that? Joe Biden was advocating for that. Mykola Zlochevsky, the corrupt oligarch who was the CEO of Burisma, paid his son millions of dollars. And Victor Shokin, the prosecutor, had seized land, a few homes.
love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to break up so I can make a better me. Better believe in your mind, cause it's everything. You can mold, shape, find almost anything. All it takes is some time and some clarity to find your identity. It's mind over everything. And when I feel like this, I'm immortal. 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 Don't stop, just step up. And if you get in my way, you gonna feel the wrath. Gotta say it to my face while he's looking back. Mirror breaks after math. When I hate, I attack. And when I feel like this, I'm immortal. And when I feel like this, I'm immortal. And when I feel like this, I'm immortal. 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 Don't stop, just step it up.